Plastics have gotten a bad rap for some good reasons and some for not so good reasons. The one thing people seem to forget is that all thermoplastics are recyclable, but only about 9% of what we make is actually recycled. Sadly, there have only been about 7 true recycle codes for plastics. Even though there are hundreds of variations of polymers, many materials fall under number 7, which to the recycling industry equates to landfill, not the path of recycling the material. As with other materials discussed, our local municipalities and federal level government have not done enough when it comes to how we recycle any material. How many times have you seen the extra local blue or green bin meant for recycling goods have bags of trash that contain food items which are not recycled? The average American thinks they will sort it out for me, and because their normal trash can is full, they toss it in the recycle bin. Generally, misinformed consumers have not only driven up the cost to recycle, but have also lessened what is recycled. We're approaching our local recycling like we have our resources we should be recycling. This shows up especially in our plastic recycling programs and the low percentage of plastic we recycle. Of the 9% recycled worldwide, 30% of this is PET. And as another one, let's look at number 5, which is polypropylene. It's only about 3% of the 9%. So not only are we recycling plastics at a low rate, we're mainly recycling 1 or 2 of these materials listed. And one of the other things that people need to watch out for is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are not negotiable. And just to give you an example, polystyrene, number 6, a lot of people try and shove ABS or SAN into number 6. ABS is acrylonitrile butadiene styrene. Because it says styrene, they want to shove it into number 6. SAN is styrene acrylonitrile. The first word in its name is styrene, but it does not fall into number 6. It falls into number 7. Plastic is beneficial to reducing carbon emissions in one way compared to glass, metal, or paper. It's due to its very high strength to weight ratio and conversion cost. One of the most common questions I am asked about recycled materials, especially plastic, are they FDA? To explain this, let's ask the question, was the material FDA approved in its previously converted 100% virgin form? So I'm not talking about the pellets, I'm talking about the plastic part that was made from virgin plastic. Is it FDA approved because they used FDA approved resin? The answer is no. They are not automatically FDA approved for food contact after the material has been converted. Materials that are submitted and approved by the FDA are for their form in which they were presented. The plastic pellets prior to conversion are FDA approved. So in other words, once the bag is opened, FDA is no longer, technically it's FDA starting point, but it is not an FDA approved part. So why are the parts made from FDA approved materials not FDA approved? There are too many variables that can affect the FDA status of a material, such as the colorant, process control, additives added by the converter, and so on, that is either not present in the initial material or it is closely monitored and tested. For example, a plastic part utilized in a hip or knee replacement is not FDA approved because it was made from FDA approved plastic. Physical reprocessing of materials where it is ground or pulverized is first sorted for color, foreign contaminants, washed, repelletized, or converted back into flake. Recyclers must show that contaminant levels in the repurposed material have low enough levels. Typically, recyclers will use a third-party lab for reassurance and testing, not only for properties, but also for food contact. Unlike the manufacturer of virgin material, recyclable materials present recyclers with a unique problem that their source of materials will critically affect the likelihood of passing third-party testing. Control of the stream to ensure there is no commingling of non-FDA and FDA-approved type materials just doesn't happen. What needs to also be considered is the FDA food contact ratings have different conditions. There's high temperature heat sterilized, boiling water sterilized, hot fill or pasteurized below 150, room temperature, refrigerated storage, frozen or refrigerated storage where the foods are intended to be reheated in a container at the same time of use. So not only is it not FDA, which rating do you fall under for your particular part? That's where using an outside lab for testing purposes helps ensure the converter actually is utilizing the correct material for their client. APC Packaging has invested considerable time ensuring each lot is tested by a third-party lab such as SGS or Intertech to test the lot for food contact and properties. With the PET recycle stream is overtly skewed to bottle for drinks. On the other hand, PP recycle market can range from clarified polypropylene for cups to car batteries to a baby seat. This affects not only the quality, color, and properties, but also can affect the cost as well. For this reason, I've listed many of the things that need to be considered and investigated when deciding on a recycle supplier or vendor that has recycle for conversion. 1, ask what is the stream of recycle mainly derived from? PP toys, batteries, food containers, etc. Inspect the actual facility and see what and how they sort, wash, and extrude the material. Do they float sort, NIR or IR scan, or a combination of the methods? How many times do they wash the material prior to recycling? How do they handle the contaminated water from washing the resin? Do they pre-blend and post-blend the material? Do they test every lot in-house? Do they run a vented extruder to pull off volatiles? Do they run the material through a screen pack to remove as many contaminants such as carbon or aluminum flakes? Do they use a third-party lab for verification? And lastly, buy based on polymer type and publish spec for the PCR plastic supplier. So what I'm saying there is you want someone that buys the material based on the type and a published spec along with 1 through 10. For clear PCR materials, it's critical to understand that many of these materials are clear but have tints added to them. Most common is a slight blue cast that is given to PET water bottles. PET water bottles have been getting thinner, which makes this blue cast seem even less apparent. As an example, I've put 3 preforms up here. The first one is 100% virgin preform. The second is 50% virgin with 50% PCR. The third is 100% PCR. And what I want to point out is the difference between 50 and 100 is basically nil. The difference between no PCR, with PCR is substantial. And where this comes into play is most PET has a tint involved when they first manufacture it, and more tint is added to the PCR. Well, in a bottle where the wall thicknesses have gotten anything but thinner, plastics for injection molding and utilizing PET, this becomes a problem because the wall stocks become thicker. The picture shows you a good example. That's only at 3 millimeters. If you think of a jar, a thick-walled jar at 6 millimeters, it more than doubles. The other thing, too, is also consider that resins such as ABS, which are not on the list of recycled material, are also offered in PCR. Recyclers have seen a jump in sales over the last 5 or 6 years, and ABS PCR is available now in most countries. Clear materials such as PETG, PCTA, PCTG, SAN are typically not recycled due to complications within the PCR stream, as well as they all fall under the number 7. With plastics and recycling, attention also needs to be given to the form which the final product will be made. Plastics are divided into 2 categories, which are rigid and flexible, and affects what is and is not recycled by material recovery services. The next 2 slides will show us some examples. The next slide is all items that are not recycled. So you got everything from like saran wrap, deos, styrofoam, flexible packaging like bags. The bags, like shopping bags, they're not being recycled by the recycling management systems, but a lot of chain stores have started recycle programs for the bags. On the top, all your bottles, your PET, polyethylene bottles, the PP caps, those are all recycled. The aluminum cans, but also yogurt cups and like clamshells are recyclable, but you need to check with your local service to see if they actually do take them. Excuse me. Plastic molding is also known for its ability to duplicate tight tolerances when compared to glass or paper. This is not only due to the process, but the materials as well. Introducing more variables will in fact result in some flaws that normally would never be acceptable if molded with all virgin materials. As an example, our stream of PCR PP is derived mostly from clarified polypropylene. Clarified PP is typically a copolymer polypropylene. Copolymer propylene is known for its impact resistance and low flex modulus. This has resulted in some long drop parts that cannot be 100% PCR. Due to the fact that it is a copolymer PCR, it's a little more flexible, a little more soft than virgin material, and when injecting a long part off a steel core, you can get a mushrooming effect or like an accordion type effect to the part due to the resistance created when pushing the part out of the mold. This one, this has to do with plastics because there's some that are out there. It's not bioresins. They call them bioadditives for petroleum-based plastics. I want to warn you guys to please read all the words on these additives. They tend to be very misleading. What they do is they mix a little bit of honesty in with false claims. So if you look at claim 1, the world is suffering from a food shortage. Sure, some places are. Using land to grow plants for bioresin takes away precious land and resources from farming food crops. Totally untrue. Claim 2, Organic additive, when added at such a low percentage of total weight, makes any plastic item biodegradable in the landfill or the ocean in 1 to 10 years. Sounds great, right? When plastic biodegrades, it does not just break the plastic down into microplastics like most products do. It turns into a mixture of raw natural materials that becomes organically rich soil or nutrients in the ocean. I'm sorry, that is not true. So you do need to make sure these claims are vetted out, and a lot of times the easiest way to vet it is just read the brochure. Considerations for PCR. Have you inspected to ensure the PCR source meets your needs? Is your package categorized as rigid or flexible? What is the actual percentage of PCR in the entire package? Color can vary more over multiple lots, so a range should be agreed upon. PCR will have contaminants such as black specks at some point, so a range should be